Hello and good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the Garden Hour with MU Extension. I'm Debi Kelly. I'll be the host for today. I'm located in Jefferson County, just south of St. Louis. We're always happy to have you with us. We're excited always every week to share our knowledge with you. We want everyone to be happy and healthy gardeners and landscape and flower producers with cutting your flowers and bringing them inside, which is one of the things I really like to do. Each week is to bring in some new cut flowers into my living room because it makes me feel so good. I am so happy today because we're going to have our new extension climatologist do the presentation for us. But just real quick, I have an announcement to make so that you all will know. We're really sad to say that down in the southwest corner of our state, Robert Balick has decided to move on. And so his last day with extension was yesterday. So that position is now open. If you're in one of those blue, light colored blue in the counties in the South, and you normally visit with Robert, feel free to reach out to any one of us. We're more than happy to answer your questions, no matter where we're located across the state. So we're just happy to still be able to reach out. And as we find out when that position becomes available and open and we get a new hire, we'll definitely let you know. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing because I am so happy to introduce to you Zack Leasor, who is our new climatologist for extension. And so Zack, welcome. We're so excited that you're here with us each week now.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here today. It's certainly a busy weather week, so there's lots to talk about, and I'll try and not take up too much time today. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And so to start with our weather summary, I think the main highlight is that we've really kind of flipped the pattern here. So after a wet start to August and wet end of July, now we see the hot and dry weather that's really returning to Missouri over the past week. So just to start and give a little context, the maps I'm showing here are precipitation across the last 30 days in Missouri. And so on the left, you can see just those precipitation totals. And so where you see the band of purple from the northwest to the southeast there, that's roughly 10 to 15 inches of rainfall. And there's been a lot of locations that have picked up over a foot in the past 30 days in those locations. On the right shows the same time period, but looking at departure from normal precipitation. So where you see those greens and blues, we're above average, which is most of the locations, but there are some locations where you'll see in yellow that are still behind on rainfall over the past 30 days. And these locations really correspond to where we're still seeing areas of drought across the state. And so here on the right, I'm showing the most recent US Drought Monitor map for Missouri. And so this came out last Thursday on August 17th. But the good news is, if we go back to July 11th and look at the change in the Drought Monitor map, we've actually seen a lot of improvement over the last 6 weeks. And so on the left here is that change from July 11th. Anywhere you see green, there's been categorical improvement from the drought monitor. But what we see here is dark greens, even a blue on here, which is improvement in multiple categories. So especially in southeast Missouri, we had areas that were severe and extreme drought, but now saw 12 inches of rainfall and may only be abnormally dry or no drought. So the rainfall was really much needed for Missouri, but we do still have drought across the state. What's not going to help the drought situation is this map here on the left shows rainfall over the past week. And really, there was no significant rainfall across the state over the past week. So it's been very, very dry. Looking ahead, this map is from the Weather Prediction Center. And so it's their 7-day quantitative precipitation forecasts. So forecasting how much rainfall we might see over the next week. And so one thing you'll notice here is you'll see some greens over the state of Missouri, but overall those can be a little bit deceiving. Looking at the map here, the dark green, for example, is really only a quarter to a half inch of rainfall. So even if this forecast were to verify this time of year with lots of evapotranspiration occurring, that's really not enough weekly rainfall to catch us up with the water balance. So another dry week ahead, unfortunately, for Missouri. Now, to accompany the dryness, we've also had a lot of heat, and I'm sure you're all well aware of this at this point. So I've just kind of pulled up a few different observations from around Columbia here, just to kind of show what we've been dealing with. So in this yellow box, this is a Missouri mesonet station we have at Sanborn Field. And you'll see over the past week, temperatures have creeped up into the mid upper 90s. It was a little cooler yesterday. But what's really been remarkable is our dew points. So how much moisture, and this is going to contribute to the humidity, how much those have increased as well. And so what we're seeing right now is a lot of extreme heat, which isn't uncommon for August. But what is a little uncommon in August is to have this combination of heat and humidity, which makes it really, really uncomfortable. When you get dew points up to nearly 80 degrees, that's really thick, soupy air, and it's contributed to this kind of heat wave here. The other records I'm showing are, this table is from the Columbia Airport, and it's just a few hourly observations on this past Sunday, actually. But I just want to highlight here, we're hitting an air temperature of 97, dew point in the upper 70s. This heat index values were actually above 115 degrees. And courtesy of Pat Gannan, the retired state climatologist, he's been keeping heat index records at the airport. We set 2 new heat index records over the last 50 years, going back to 1973 at the airport, of 116.4 and 118 degree heat index on Sunday. So really, really remarkable, but uncomfortable heat index values this week. So what's causing this? It's a pretty boring weather pattern. So on the left, this is really showing the upper atmosphere. So this is the 250 millibar level. Think roughly 10 kilometers up into the atmosphere. And so this map's really good at showing where the jet stream is and where that activity would be. But really zoomed into the US here, you really can barely see the jet stream. And that's because the jet stream's actually going northward into Canada and then dipping just into the Northeast. That's leaving most of the United States under a ridge of high pressure, warm temperatures. And this really also opens us up to heat from the Gulf and south that brings that moisture and heat into Missouri. And so on the right, this is our surface analysis. It really shows the same thing. There's this kind of stationary front across most of the country that's separating us from cooler air to the north. But if you're south of this front, as we are here, you're getting the heat and you're getting the moisture right now. So really widespread heat across a lot of the US. This map kind of shows the dew points. So where's the surface moisture at right now? And you can see some of the highest dew points in the country right now are actually in Missouri. We've had some southerly winds this week that brought some moisture up from the Gulf. We've also got some crop sweat. So with this heat, there's a lot of evapotranspiration coming off mature corn, mature soybeans, and that gets trapped in the surface too. There haven't been a lot of systems or fronts to push that moisture out of here. So we're left with all that heat and humidity just pooling up in Missouri. And so one other thing we've gotten to experience this week, and you might have seen it around the state, is because of all this low level moisture and humidity, we've had a lot of foggy starts to the week. So almost every day here in Columbia, it's been foggy at my house. My windshield's been fogged up. And this is because, when those dew points are in the upper 70s and we cool down in the morning, we're really hitting that dew point and creating fog. There's also been a lot of temperature inversions, as shown here on the left, where the temperature just a few feet higher in the atmosphere is actually hotter than near the surface, and this traps that moisture near the ground. So we have been seeing a lot of fog. This satellite image is from Monday. It looks like clouds across Missouri, but actually what all of that is morning fog. To the south, you can see what looks like on the visible satellite clouds with a little more texture. But here, these are the fog that was also picked up. So that's also been an interesting feature this week. And so really quickly, these are some slides from the National Weather Service in St. Louis that covers East Central Missouri, including Columbia. And I just wanted to highlight these because there are a lot of alerts out this week, including an excessive heat warning through Friday for a lot of the state. And this is because when we combine that humidity with the heat, dangerous kind of heat index values. So really 110 to 115 common today. Looking on Thursday and Friday, the humidity will be a little lower, but temperatures still in the upper 90s. So heat indices right around 110. But I do have some good news. This weekend, we will see relief from the heat. So a cold front's going to come through sometime on Saturday. It's probably not going to bring any rain with it, but we will see much cooler temperatures by the start of next week. And we'll really knock that humidity down as well and get near seasonal dew point levels. So if you can hang in there till Sunday, temperatures will be a lot more comfortable then. One thing we need to consider with all this heat, and especially with vegetation that's very mature right now, is there's been a lot of evapotranspiration, or water returning back to the atmosphere through evaporation or transpiration from plants. And so here at Sanborn Field, we calculated at a few of the stations, and what we're seeing is each day, this is the amount of water that we're estimating is being evaporated or transpired back to the atmosphere. And it's roughly 0.2 of an inch per day. I just want to bring that up because we're also seeing no rain. And so with no rainfall to replace what's being lost, it's easy to kind of sneak back into the drying out and drought conditions as well. So that's an important consideration there. I want to end by looking into the future a little bit. We know this upcoming week's going to be hot, getting cooler, but staying dry. But what about in the future, especially as it pertains to drought? When can we expect drought relief? Over the next 2 weeks, it doesn't look great for drought relief. So these forecasts are from the Climate Prediction Center. So we do see next week, so 6 to 10 days out, this will be mostly next week, cooler temperatures, but the dryness persists. So we're likely to see another dry week next week. And then when we get into Labor Day week as well, could see a chance of the heat returning, and then signals are showing we're probably leaning below precipitation then as well. So looking like a dry end of August and beginning of a September, unfortunately. Moving much farther in advance, maybe this fall or winter, we can really get the precipitation needed to end the drought here. The good news is that we do have El Nino conditions right now. And so you probably heard this in the news. And this has a pretty significant impact on weather in the United States, especially during the winter months. And so what these maps show here are El Nino composites. So all this does is take the weather from every El Nino year and average it together to give us an idea of what we might expect at different locations in the country. So this is for September, October, and November. Typically in Missouri, during El Nino conditions, we actually see a small percent increase in risk for cold extremes. So we could maybe see a little colder than usual fall, maybe an early frost, and then a slight risk for an increase in some of those wet extremes, which is what we want to see right now with the drought conditions. Looking just a little bit farther into the winter, these maps are a little different, but still showing the same kind of patterns for winter. We're on the left, we would expect actually warmer temperatures once we get into November to February, but similar pattern with precipitation through the winter months, where we should expect above normal precipitation. I will end with a caveat on some of these seasonal outlooks here. Is there's a lot of uncertainty here, and you'll also notice that Missouri kind of sits pretty close to the boundary between warm and cold, or dry and wet. And so this means that a small bump in the jet stream due to Enzo or a long-term pattern this winter could really change things. So we're really kind of right on the border. And so it's tough to make a forecast, but we can hope that those wetter conditions verify. So that's all I've got for today. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll also include my contact information here as well. So thank you all.
Wow, Zach, thank you really very much. Great information, great energy. We're happy again to have you. You're welcome to stay and learn all about gardening if you so choose. We look forward to having you back every week. So again, welcome to Missouri.
Thank you.
And what I'd like to do now is go ahead and turn it over to Kelly. She's going to be our moderator for today.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. And thank you, Zach. That was a great weather report. Okay, well, let's get right into our questions for today. The first one is about renovating our cool season lawns. Um, Sometimes our lawns are looking pretty rough this time of the year, but luckily there's things that we can do to give them a little bit of help. And so Debbie is going to talk to us about that. So, Debbie?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. I did this a couple of years ago um, to my lawn when I was actually still living in Columbia, and you can see a difference in this picture. This is not my lawn, but it could have been my lawn, and the fact that next door had a really nice green turf, and mine kind of looked like this. It was sparse, a lot of weeds in there, and so you don't have to take it down totally to the very end and restart from scratch. However, you can renovate and rejuvenate that lawn. So we'll talk about some of these different steps that you can take. So first, what you really want to do is do a soil test. It'll probably take about 5 to 7 working days in order for you to get that back. Most people do the soil test in the spring, but really the best time, do it anytime that you can. But the best time is to do it in August, because if your pH is off and you need to adjust it, adding either sulfur or lime to the soil will take about 6 months before you see the total effects of that change. So the first thing you want to do is a soil test to see if you really need to change that pH and if there's any nutrients that you need to replenish back into that soil. You want to control any existing vegetation that you don't want. So in this picture here, you can see there's a lot of different kinds of weeds in here. You can spray those. You can do a broadleaf type of a weed killer over that. You can use Roundup to kill everything. If you've got a patch that's just really hard, you may have to use Roundup a second time if you so choose. But whatever you decide to do, you want to do that first. Probably want to wait about 2 weeks at a minimum. And depending upon the broadleaf herbicide that you might use, you might want to wait even a little bit longer than that. So make sure that you read the label on that herbicide. You want to set your mower when you're ready to start doing anything, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks afterwards. Set your mower as low as possible. You always hear us say set your mower really high, but when you're going to renovate or rejuvenate, you really want to set that mower as low as possible, almost like scalping that off for all that vegetation that's there, because you really want to have a good seed to soil contact, and you want to rake up anything that might be left. The next thing that you want to do is you want to prepare the surface. Either you can power rake it, you can verticut, or you can core aerate, depending upon how much that you actually want to do, depending upon what the conditions are for your particular lawn. So a verticutter here is a picture. It's a small machine, walk behind, powered, and you just see like these blades that are here that are actually going to slice into that turf and kind of give that turf an opening where that seed can go into and have that good soil to seed contact. You can use a power rake. A power rake is really going to kind of totally remove just about anything and everything that's on that surface of that soil, which was important as to me as to why I wanted you to see this full complete picture, so you have an understanding of just how much that power rake is. You may not need to use that at all. You might want to then perhaps do a core aerator. And so you can see the tines underneath this machine where it actually digs into the soil, fills up that tine, and then that soil comes out as cores on the top of that soil. And that also makes holes and actually that good soil to seed contact that you want. And again, it depends upon what it is that you need to do for your lawn. You can also use a dethatcher. Usually that's used when you've got at least an inch of organic matter of growth of the grass that's built up underneath where it's on top of that soil, and having that thick thatch will not allow that seed to have good contact with the soil. So you could also get a dethatcher if you want. And then you just need to go ahead and remove all that excess debris that's off the top. I generally leave the soil from the core aerator so it can go back into the soil. The next thing that you want to do is pull back out that soil test and see what those recommendations are, and go ahead and add the recommendations so that you can fertilize that lawn. Then you want to go ahead, make a final pass. If you need to have a better soil to seed contact, you'll kind of have an understanding. You might want to go ahead and reuse a core aerator or the verticutter, depending upon what conditions you've got for your lawn. Then you want to apply the grass seed of your choice. Again, we're doing this as a cool season, so this is now when you want to do this, because it gives us that couple of months before the temperature actually freezes, and our cool season grasses really, really like those cold or cooler temperatures in order to grow. A kicker here is for you to remember, a good tip is to apply that seed in 2 different directions. So if you're going in one direction, such as this gentleman in this picture is going in this direction, he might want to, on the next pass, go in the opposite type of a direction. Lee Miller was our turf specialist with Extension before he left and went to a different university, so that position is open on our campus. But Lee always made the comment, and it stuck in my head, it's cheaper to buy grass seed than it is to buy herbicides. So if they have a recommendation of how much seed to put down per square footage, you might want to consider doing a little bit heavier seed surface on that soil. Like he says, it's cheaper to buy the grass seed to get that good seed growth. You want to maybe just lightly rake it in if you notice that the seed is kind of standing up on top of any existing grass that's still there, or any debris that might be left. You do want to water it frequently, especially when it's getting established as new growth, because you really want those roots to grow down and to grow deeper into the soil. You don't want to overwater, but you do want to make sure that you water that so that it does have enough moisture so that it can continue to grow healthily. And then as that grass continues to grow, then you can lessen on the frequency of that water. And then you could mow that grass after about 6 weeks of good growth. I've put into the slide here, and it's also going to be dropped into the chat box, cool season grasses if you want to establish your lawn from scratch, or if you actually want to renovate your lawn. And these tips here are the ones that I pulled out from that particular extension publication, but there's more detail in this publication if you so choose and would like a little bit more.
All right, thank you, Debbie. Great information. Okay, next we are going to hear from Donna, and she is going to tell us a little bit about saving seed, how long that seed is viable, and how to store seed. So Donna?
Okay, I'm trying to get this going. Let's see here. All right. So I get this question a lot, especially this time of year when, summer's now upon us and people are, done planting green beans, they're done planting cucumbers, they're done planting a lot of their flower seeds. How do I store them, and how long will those seeds last? And so I just figured I'd just put together a couple slides here to answer those questions. If you are collecting seeds, when you collect them from flowers and even vegetables, just make sure they are thoroughly dry. We want to reduce that humidity or that moisture in those seeds down under 60%, so that when we put them in storage, they will not mold or deteriorate. And so make sure they're thoroughly dry. So when I do flower seeds, I usually let them lay on my counter for a couple of weeks in an open dish. I know that the seeds on the top of the slide, they're ones that will explode as they are drying, and so they will pop all over the place. So I always put a loose fitting lid just on there to deflect those seeds back down into the container. The bottom picture is rough blazing star, and it's one that you can leave just in an open dish. You can do this with other seeds too if you're collecting them. When you go to store them, you always want to put them in, once they're dry, you always want to put them into something like a plastic container or a plastic bag. You can even do a paper bag. Doesn't have to be plastic, or even paper envelopes. Anything that will not have condensation in. And so just remember that. Avoid high temperatures, because the higher the temperature, your germination rates start to fail. And so you want these seeds to last as long as possible. So 2 key things, make sure that they're dried out completely and they stay dry, and that they're not in a hot area. I always tell people, put them in a cool basement if it's not a wet basement, or store them in the refrigerator. Now, the question I get a lot is, why not the freezer? Well, some seeds can tolerate the freezer just fine, and it does not reduce viability. And when I say viability, I mean the length of that seed to live. So a lot of times I will say for refrigerators best, because there are some seeds that the embryos are killed by the freezing temperatures. So refrigerator is best, or a cool area where they won't get overly heated. Now, if you've bought seeds and you want to try to, keep those, then I always tell people, don't open them until you're ready to use them, because a lot of them are in a sealed package, or they're in a wax paper packet, and those will help preserve those seeds and keep them drier. So keep them closed until you're ready to use them. Once those seeds are open, you want to try to keep them indoors. You want to try to keep them dry. Once again, lower humidity under that 60%. And of course, store them in the refrigerator or in a basement area where it's going to stay a lot cooler. I always really recommend, whether you're using seeds that have been prepackaged or you're collecting your own seeds, I always try to encourage people to check that germination rate about every 2 years, because we will see a dramatic decrease, especially if they are not stored right. In a good way to check that germination, or check for that viability, do a germination test. And a lot of times all it is taking a piece of paper towel, you put 10 seeds on it, moisten that paper towel down, put it in a baggie, and see how many are going to germinate within 5 to 7 days. So pretty easy. And, if you have 8 out of 10, you have 80%. If you have 2 out of 10, you have 20%. And so if you have a lower percentage, you just know to sow it a little heavier next year. And the one thing I always forget to do, is record that germination rating. Get you a pen or even a grease pencil and mark it on that package. And you always put the date that you tested and the germination rating, so that you remember, okay, all right, I tested these last fall and I need to go a little heavier on my seed. Now, I do get a lot of questions about how long are seeds good for. And this is off of extension publications, and this is off of research-based data. So 2 years, you can count on corn, lettuce, onions, parsley, peppers. They stay good for 2 years. Things stay good for 3 years: beans, broccoli, carrots, spinach, peas. 4 years: beets, cabbage, kale, squash, and tomatoes. And then 5 years: cucumbers, muskmelon, radish. Now, at the bottom, you will see seed viability can vary greatly. And I say that, and it all goes back to how you store them, how much humidity and how much moisture is there, if you collected them, or, what the variety is, because, for example, lettuce seeds, definitely you can have a lot of germination problems within a year. Whereas tomatoes, I've been planting the same tomato seeds for now close to 15 years. But they've been stored correctly. And so just keep that in mind. The more the more you can limit that humidity and the heat, the longer those seeds are going to last you. But this is just on average. Now, like Debbie said, we're putting a lot of those links in the chat box, and the guide where I pulled these numbers is in the chat box. So definitely take a look at that guide and keep it on hand, and that way you can be reminded of how long those seeds will last roughly. Okay, that's all I have. Back to you, Kelly.
All right, thank you, Donna. Okay, next, Debbie has a horticulture terminology thing for you today. So, Debbie, what do you have for us?
I have the term chill hours. And so I want to know, Is it the number of hours a tree is exposed to cold temperatures before its sap freezes? Number of hours a plant or seed needs to break dormancy to sprout, flower, or bear fruit. A number of hours a plant requires to go into dormancy for the winter. And there is the poll. So if you want to go ahead and make your selections. And we're getting some in. Got about 20 of you guys that have answered. Give you a few more seconds here. All righty, ready? Okay, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So 65% of you say it's B. The plant needs to break dormancy to sprout, bear flower, or bear fruit. 26, the amount of hours required for a plant to go into dormancy, and 9%, the number of hours that a tree is exposed before its sap will actually start to freeze. So let's look at this, and the answer is the number of hours that a plant or seed needs to be exposed to temperatures, usually between 32 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit, in order to break dormancy to either sprout, flower, or bear fruit. It's also known as vernalization. So the amount of time and temperature can vary depending upon what plant it is, but generally the plants will need several weeks of that temperature below a certain amount in order for it to break that dormancy so it can start moving into its next phase of growth. And so I've given you a couple of examples here. All of our fruit trees, nut trees have to go through some vernalization. Garlic, milkweed, a lot of our flower bulbs, we plant them in the fall because in order for them to bloom in the spring, they need that cold temperature. And then an agronomic crop, wheat, you'll notice farmers plant that in the fall and it goes over the winter, and then it really starts sprouting up in late winter and early spring. So you guys are smart as always, and I always appreciate being able to do the hort terminology for you.
All right, thank you, Debbie. And we did have one question about how is stratification different than chill hours?
Okay, so stratification is actually where you stratify the plant, or is that scarification?
Yeah, scar is where
Yeah.
you injure
Yeah.
the seed. Yes.
Yeah, and so stratification, vernalization would be the same. It's just another name.
All right, very good. Okay, so our next topic of discussion will be by Donna again, and she's going to talk about some shade plants that you can use as ground cover. Donna?
Okay, great. I love this topic. I wish I had more shade myself. I live in a newer home construction, and so I don't have big trees. And so shade plants always have fascinated me because they're so beautiful. We just recently visited the Better Home Gardens test garden in Des Moines, Iowa, and I was amazed. And I would definitely recommend that as a site to visit for any horticulture enthusiast, plant lover. And so some of these pictures are actually from that garden. And as we walked through the gardens, I just was dreaming of one day being able to have that shade garden. And so I just decided I was going to cover some of these plants because even though I can't grow them, they're still some of my favorites. And so I just figured I'd talk about a few of them. The first one that has always fascinated me is actually called Brunera, or false forget-me-nots. And it's a showy ground cover. And as you can see, it's the heart-shaped leaves at the top with that neat venation. And so it's always, all the varieties have more of a shiny gray pattern. It's just, they're gorgeous. Hardiness, they're pretty hardy. So they are pretty widespread planted throughout the Midwest. They're part shade to full shade. But one thing that about these that I'm fascinated with, they want that moist shade, not that dry shade. And so if you have dry shade, you probably need to water them if you choose this variety. They do well in containers. I was just blown away at how many containers this plant was added to at that garden, and they were doing wonderfully. They're very low maintenance, low growing. And the other thing that's really nice about them is they're deer and rabbit resistant. And I get a lot of questions about that, mainly because deer are such a big nuisance in a lot of the urban areas. Another one that is an awesome, good companion for hostas would be pulmonaria. Some people call this lungwort. And it's mainly planted for its showy foliage, but it does have some bluish purple blooms that are also beautiful. This is one that can suffer a lot of heat scorch. So once again, dry soils is not a real good thing for them. So if you want to plant them in the shade, make sure that you are watering. And so these come in spotted foliage and also gray, to a gray blue foliage. Once again, I said, it's really good with hostas, pairs up nicely. They can go into dormancy, and this has happened to me a long time ago when I did have a shade planted area. I always thought I lost it during the summer, and then, oh, well, here it came back in the fall once the fall moisture started. And so they can go to dormancy during the hot heat. They do spread slowly. So if you have a large area to fill, you want to plant multiples. And once again, it's another deer tolerant plant that would be awesome in a shade garden. We have all sorts of ferns that we could plant, many options, many patterns, many color variations. Watch the hardiness zones though, because some of them are only zoned hardy to zone 7. Some of them are zone 4, and some of them are 3 to 8. So just pay attention to the zones, and especially the zone that you're in. These will go part shade to full shade. And they're very low maintenance. They stay where they're at. They will fill in an area nicely. And so it can be naturalized. So if you wanted them on the side of the house or under a big oak tree canopy, you could do it. Then we have wild ginger. This is one of my favorites because it is very, it has that staying power, and it's really resilient because it is that native plant. Easy to naturalize, spreads nicely. But to me, it stays in nice control in my area because I have planted it in my part shade areas. Very tolerant to many soil conditions, so it can take that dry shade as well as that moist shade. They do bloom, but the blooms are small and inconspicuous. So what this one is mainly used for is that foliage. Then we have ajuga. Ajuga is a very low ground cover. It's very tolerant to many soil types and sites. So I've seen it on wet conditions. I've seen it on drier conditions. Several color variations. We have the green ones. We have a dark purple one. We have a tricolor variety. So definitely take a look at all the varieties that are out there. It does spread very easily. I have had people tell me it gets out of control if it really likes that area, but I've not really had that experience with it. But I can see where it could be out of control. Once again, it's one that is resistant to a lot of the rabbit damage, the deer damage. And so it's one that I would encourage you to look at for a ground cover. Then we also have the coral bells, and I threw coral bells in there, but not necessarily because it's a low growing plant, because some of them can get up to 12 to 18 inches tall. But I threw this one in there because there are so many new leaf patterns and leaf coloring, and they're just an exciting plant that there's new varieties coming out all the time. Part shade to full shade works really well. You don't plant this one for the blooms because the blooms are small and they're more inconspicuous, but you plant this for the foliage. And just be aware it can reseed, especially some of the older varieties. But it's really one I really like to promote because it does well in Missouri gardens. And I know there's lots more out there that are ground covers, but to keep time down on my presentations, I just presented a few, but I encourage you definitely to take a look at the many ground covers they have for shades as well as sun out there. So back to you, Kelly.
All right, thank you, Donna. We did have one question. Do you have any suggestions for under a black walnut tree?
There are lists out there. I would encourage you to take a look, reach out to one of us for some of those lists, or you can do a search online. Just make sure to put like black walnut resistant plants and put the word extension behind it if you want to do your own search. There are lots and lots of plants out there that are resistant to the juglone that the black walnut produces, but definitely take a look at those lists. And like I said, reach out to one of us and we can help you.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. So my office is here at the Springfield Botanical Gardens. We have a hosta garden here that is basically planted underneath a grove of black walnut trees. And there's other things in there as well, many of which Donna just mentioned. But we have found that hostas do really well under black walnuts, and we haven't had any trouble. So that's just one thing you might consider. So, okay.
And I might say that there may be some people wondering why I didn't include hostas in on my presentation. It's because they are so widespread and they are so well loved. And I was thinking more of the pairings with the hostas.
One addition probably is since the toxin that the walnut gives is a lot in the foliage. In the fall, you want to remove that foliage and put it somewhere else.
Yes, good idea. Thank you, Ramon. Okay, well, our next topic of discussion is one of my favorite times of the year. So let me get this shared here. Okay, and we are going to talk about sunflower harvest. Okay, so it is the time of the year where if you have planted sunflowers, it is time to think about harvesting them. If you do grow sunflowers, you know that there's a lot of pollinators and butterflies and birds that have probably already been picking at your sunflowers. And honestly, this is one of the main reasons I plant sunflowers. I love to watch the goldfinches pick at them throughout the season. They are so much fun to watch. They're such beautiful birds. And if you plant sunflowers, they will come. Same thing with other butterflies and pollinators. They absolutely adore sunflowers. So those are good enough reasons to plant them in and of itself. So this is a chart that I found a couple of years ago, and someone had actually drawn this, and I absolutely love it. It's just kind of a guideline of the sunflower process throughout the growing season. And you can see here, it takes about 125 days from the time that the seed is planted until the seeds are ripe and ready to harvest. So plan ahead, get these guys in the ground as quick as you can. But we are nearing seed ripening time right now, and it is time to start thinking about harvesting. So you know your sunflowers are ready to harvest when the seeds are plump and they're developed. And so if you think about just a bag of sunflower seeds that you would get at the store to snack on, that'll kind of give you an idea of what you want them to look like on the plant as well. So when they start to plump up and they look well developed, that's an indicator that it's time to harvest. Also, the flower petals will start to dry. They're going to begin to fall off. The back of the flower heads will start to turn from green to kind of a yellowish brown. The flower heads themselves will start to droop, and the foliage will start to yellow as well. So whenever you're ready to harvest, you want to cut about a foot below the bloom, so give it plenty of space there, and then just hang them somewhere to dry. So any place where they're not going to get moisture, you can put it in a garage, in a covered porch, just any place where they're going to remain dry, that they're going to get a lot of good airflow, and that so that they can continue that drying process. And so once they are pretty well dry, you can start to remove the seeds from the flower heads. And I haven't found a really speedy way to do this other than just by hand. And I like to remove the seeds and kind of store them in a bucket or anything like that. Now you can also if you're going to use your bird or your sunflower seeds to feed the birds, you can leave them on the heads and just put the heads outside in the winter for the birds to pick through. But I do find that the birds don't like that as well. Some birds, it's no problem at all, but some smaller birds, they have a hard time getting those seeds out of there. So even if you're going to feed birds, it's best to remove all of those seeds if you can, like we see here in the picture. And then, like Donna was mentioning about seed saving, make sure that you're storing them properly, make sure that you've got them labeled with a date and what they are. And then, if you have a sunflower that's done really well this year, I encourage you to save the seed and try planting that again. I have a sunflower in my garden right now. It was a complete volunteer. I did not plant it, but boy, it is tall. It's got a ton of flowers on it, and I'm definitely going to be saving seeds from that guy to try out again next year. And so this is just another picture of the seeds as they go through the drying out process. You know, airflow is always a good idea. If you do have a bucket with a lot of them in there, make sure you're stirring it on a regular basis to release any moisture that might have built up, because dryness is your friend when it comes to saving seeds. And then these are just some examples of some award-winning sunflowers. I encourage you, if you enjoy growing sunflowers or any kind of vegetables or flowers, enter your local county fairs. I always do, not always, many years I've done the judging here at the Ozark Empire Fair in Springfield, and we just don't have a lot of entries, and I've heard the same at other county fairs. So I encourage you as gardeners and those that are interested in gardening, enter some of your things in the fair. You might win prizes, you might win a little bit of cash. It's a great project to do with kids, so certainly do that if you're interested. And then here's just another photo. Here on the right is the sunflower with the morning glory climbing up it. I've heard of people growing climbing green beans on sunflowers because they have big stalks. They're able to support weight, but they do have a tendency to blow over in thunderstorms. So just keep that in mind as well. So that's all I had on sunflowers. So let me stop. And next, Tamra is going to tell us about a new wasp that we should be on the lookout for.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and pull up my slides. This may be something that you've seen in the news. I wanted to get it out so that you are getting the information about it that we have. We actually don't have a ton of information, but I wanted to make sure that you know what we know, how to identify it, and hopefully not panic about it. So anyway, this is the yellow-legged hornet. It was a live specimen, was recently discovered in Georgia, and by recently I mean this month. It is the first live specimen that has been found in the United States. So let me just tell you what it is that we do know. So its common name is the yellow-legged hornet. The scientific name, you'll notice that it's a Vespa, and we have Vespas here in the United States, but Vespa velutina is new to us here. It is native to Southeast Asia, and like I said, it was found in Georgia. So this is a close cousin of the northern giant hornet. You may recognize that more as the Asian giant hornet or the murder hornet. the northern giant hornet is the common name that it's going by now. Anyway, so it's a close cousin. And like that hornet, this does pose a threat to honeybees and other pollinators. So how to recognize this hornet? You'll see that it does have yellow legs, and hence the yellow-legged name, yellow-legged hornet. So if they're not completely yellow, you can actually have some darker coloration. This is a social wasp. So it does have a paper-like nest that is typically above ground. It's often found in trees. It can be a pretty large colony once it gets built up, and this would be the season when it would have a large colony, about 6,000 workers. That's significant. The sizes, the articles I was looking at said that the queen can be about 3/4 the size of the Asian giant hornet. That one can be anywhere from 1.5 inches to 2 inches. So that makes this one about a little over 1 inch to 1.5 inches. The workers are about half the size of that other hornet, so they're about 1 inch or smaller. So I just wanted to show you what this looks like compared to some other wasp and hornets that we have. So this right here is the yellow-legged hornet. This is the Asian giant hornet or northern giant hornet. And then here are some that we have here in the state. So this is a cicada killer. It's about the same size as these. These are out right now. They are not aggressive. They are beneficial. They're capturing cicadas. And like I said, absolutely not aggressive. European hornets, this is another social hornet, but not typically aggressive. And even though it's not native, you can see it's a European hornet. It's one that has adapted and is not considered invasive. This is one that you will see out right now, the eastern yellow jacket. It's much smaller, about the size of a honeybee, but this is one that I'm getting a lot of calls about right now because they're out there. They're quite aggressive. They have a large colony now, and it's hot, and they're cranky, and they have a lot of resources to protect. And so if you run across these, this is what they look like. They are aggressive right now, leave them alone, but they are not this one right here, the yellow-legged hornet. Now, I just want to point out some of these differences. All of them have that black and yellow coloration. And that's why when people see anything yellow and black, they often will panic and think that they're seeing the new invasive insects. And so that's why I'm pointing this out. You'll notice that these two, which they're close cousins, their yellow and black stripes are pretty straight across. For the European hornet and cicada killer, you're going to see that they actually have these little tips that dip down, and the northern giant hornet and the yellow-legged hornet do not. Now, you may not want to get close enough to be able to see those differences, so just stay away, and you'll be safe. But anyway, so those are some of the differences. So similar coloration, similar size for some of these, but they have very different ecology, and the stripes also look different. It's also important to note that cicada killers and European hornets can also have yellow legs, so that's not the dead giveaway. Here's some other species with similar coloration that I often get calls about. All of these are not these invasive species. These have adapted and are not considered invasive. So I just wanted to add one more slide. If you think you find them, please don't panic. At this point, they are not in Missouri. They have only been found in Georgia, and Georgia is working with USDA. They are looking to find these, and the Department of Agriculture. So they're looking for them. And just like the northern giant hornet, that one we haven't had any sightings in over a year. So they've learned a lot from that, and hopefully they'll be able to eradicate this wasp as well. So don't panic if you see a wasp. It's likely not this one. We have a lot of lookalikes. Many of those are beneficial predators as well as pollinators, so we don't want to eliminate our helpful insects. If you are certain that you found one, take a picture of it. If you want to capture it, you can as well. The Missouri Department of Agriculture does have a place where you can submit information if you think that you have found a suspect insect. And I've added this information right here, and I'll put it in the chat. So that's it for today. Newest invasive insect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tamra. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Debbie to close this out for today.
Sure. I thought I had the PowerPoint up and open. So let me do this instead and see if I can't find it. We're very happy that you guys could join us today. We're always excited when you guys are here. You ask some great questions, you're attentive. Questions that come into us are very interesting for us. We always want to know what those questions are. We like the ones that are challenging because it makes us grow as well as horticulturalists, and we greatly appreciate those as well. Think I found it. Okay, there you go. So what I want to let you all know is that we do have all of our recordings are online. We do this, of course, live via Zoom because you guys are on Zoom. We also do it live at the same time on our YouTube channel. That's MUIPM. So if you go to youtube.com/MUIPM, it will automatically bring that up. You can see the live recordings that are down here under the town halls. And then we also do our little snippets that you'll see here. It's listed under home horticulture. So if you've got thoughts and questions, you can go back and look to see what kind of topics we actually have there. Lots of great information that's been kept so that you can always go back and find it again. Just remember, we're still meeting every Wednesday from noon to 1 p.m. If you've got a question or a picture you'd like for us to look at, go ahead where you actually signed up for the first time to join the MU Garden Hour with MU Extension, and it is say ipm.missouri.edu/town halls, and you can add a picture. Picture tells us a lot of great information that we can help to identify what might be happening with that plant. And then a lot of great information comes in the chat box. So you can go ahead on the chat where you're going to actually type into someone. You should find your 3 dots here. This is an old picture, but my 3 dots have moved with a new version of Zoom, and it's located down below. But you click on those 3 dots, just right click on it, and a new window will pop up, and you can save that chat with all of that great information anywhere that you might like on your actual computer. And again, here we are with who we all are, where we're located, what our email is, and feel free to reach out to any of us because we're always happy to answer those questions for you. So stay safe while you're in the heat this week, and let's look forward to some of those cooling temperatures for next week. Have a great day.